Hello, everyone. I am back finally with a review of Madonna's 11th studio album, Hard Candy. This album was released on April 19th, 2008. This is the fourth studio album of Madonna's I am reviewing on this channel. I have already reviewed Ray of Light, Rebel Heart, her latest, and Confessions on a Dance Floor. So now I'm reviewing her 11th, as I said, and this was her last record where she was signed to Warner Brothers Records. And it's at a point in her career where I feel as though she has transitioned significantly. And her previous out record, Confessions on a Dance Floor, I highly recommend to check out that review. I applauded that record, talking about how it is my favorite, dancier Madonna album, and is my second favorite album of hers, period, after Ray of Light. And then we moved from Confessions just a few years later to Hard Candy, which has a similar sort of frivolity and a similar sort of celebratory attitude about it. She's not being super bogged down by political urgent messaging, and is being a little bit more accessible to the mainstream. And this is something that I think she wholly embraced at that point in her life. After especially American Life, she got a whole lot of controversial sort of attacks and people saying all these things because she was being so overt and so political, so opinionated. People don't like a woman with strong opinions, and especially back in 2003, it was just not as commonplace for an artist to do so. And she started getting threats and stuff, especially when her kids are involved. She was like, I want to dance, I want to have fun. And that's how Confessions was born. However, on Confessions, she was still working with a lot of lesser known producers. She's frequently, known, she works a lot with Stuart Price, Mirwais, William Orbit. Now, that's not to say these are not experienced, seasoned producers. They're just not big mainstream names like Diplo or Timbaland. Now, of course, that Timbaland is the name of the game for this record. I can't talk about Hard Candy without also talking about Timbaland and also Justin Timberlake, or is what's called Timberlake, because the duo of those two together. Justin put out an album called Future Sex Love Sounds in 2006, and Madonna talks about how that record was all she was listening to around that period, and she really wanted to make a record that sounded like that. She was really in love with it. So Hard Candy, you can see, as a love letter to this sort of urban music that is very emblematic of Timbaland's style. Timbaland has a very unique kind of East meets West kind of approach, where he has almost slightly Bhangra kind of style influences in his music. Very Eastern, rhythmic, and very sensual. And he creates some amazing beats. I mean, what he did for Nelly Furtado with her album Loose, I highly recommend you check out that review I made of that record. Another record that obviously did very well in terms of pop music, and some may consider it a sellout record, but it was just so well produced for a pop record. It just ticked all the boxes. And Timbaland, he's a good producer. I'm not gonna fault him for that. She also worked with Danja, a producer who was very hot at the time, as well as Pharrell. So this is kind of the melting pot that we're getting for a record that is more rhythmic, and a lot more sensual, and one that I think is actually very rewarding, although I know it's very polarizing for a lot of people, this record. Some people think it's her worst she's ever made. Others think it's an underrated gem. I will admit it still kind of falls middle of the road in terms of her catalog. A lot of her recent albums do. From my reviews, I talk about how MDNA, which is her second to latest album, I believe is her worst record. When you compare MDNA and Hard Candy, there's just 4 years difference. Oh my gosh, it was such a dive in the wrong direction, in my opinion, going to MDNA from Hard Candy. MDNA really makes Hard Candy look like Ray of Light, in my opinion. I'm not an MDNA fan. I may review that album on this channel. It's not that I hate everything about that record. I just think as a whole, the record does not stand on its 2 feet very well. It does not age well. There are just a lot of problems with that record, though there are some standout songs. I'm not dismissing everything off of that record. But Hard Candy, definitely has some hit or miss moments, especially on the miss part, but overall, I think the album balances out quite well. It feels very cohesive, and at the same time, it feels like each song is experimenting with a different type of production style. Moving through this record, let's talk about, before we get into it, let's just talk about the theme. So obviously it's called Hard Candy. She liked that title because, she wanted that soft and hard juxtaposition. Something that is sweet and sugary, but is also very edgy. And she adopted this image of a boxer, and that is kind of the illusion she's drawing from the outfit that she like wears on the cover, or the Stephen Klein shot cover. Now, I will admit it's probably one of the worst album covers of her career. It's just, I mean, I understand like the swirl, peppermint swirl, all of this stuff, hard candy. It's a little bit garish. It's in your face. Again, it's that hard candy aesthetic, which I would admit maybe it does embody pretty well. Let's just talk about what this album could have been named. So she really wanted to name this record The Black Madonna. If you're familiar, the Black Madonna there's lots of these statues. A lot of them are in like Eastern Europe, where it's the Virgin Mary, but she's made out of wood and usually painted black or very dark brown. It's not a racial thing. However, in recent years, it's definitely felt a little bit like it is. Because she's so dark, it's because she's so overcome with sin. So for predominantly Catholics, these Black Madonnas are places where I believe they can like unload a lot of their sin onto these statues because they're already so dark. They're like sin receptacles to some extent. I might be a little bit off on that research there, but that's just what I'm gathering from this. And obviously, Madonna pulls from a lot of Catholic imagery. And she was like, oh, I love this idea. And she literally did shoot a cover for this where she had literally the black makeup. You know, she was going to be in the pose. You can see the shot, you know, everything. But she thought ultimately maybe a quarter of the population is going to get this and the rest are just going to see it as extremely controversial. And I have to be honest, I'm really relieved she chose not to go down that route. I just think that I'm all for artists like being integral to their inner vision, and I know she really wanted to go with this idea, but I think ultimately she found it was going to be detrimental to the whole entire idea itself, when it was just never going to be something that was going to be PC. It was going to be a PR disaster, basically, for her to make an album called The Black Madonna, to wear what most would presume is blackface, which pretty much is blackface. That's just not going to look good. This is also a much more hip hop and urban record, so yeah, it's not going to add up well. So I completely understand why she ditched that idea, and I'm pretty relieved that she did, because although, you know, I don't want Madonna to never take risks, there are certain risks that are just not worth it. It's not worth your career completely for something like this. So Hard Candy is what we got. There was a working title of Licorice, which I actually really like that title too, but this is ultimately what it came to be. So diving right in, we have Candy Shop. This song sets the tone and theme sonically and lyrically about what this album will be about getting down all around the world and getting sexual and liberated. Sticky and sweet, my sugar is raw is sort of like a mantra that is repeated very sexily on this song, which actually then was used for the title of her massive world tour, which is actually deemed one of the highest selling world tours ever by an artist, the Sticky and Sweet Tour, which went from 2008 into 2009 all over the world. It was huge, 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 huge. And so that was where that came from. And I think the song is really infectious. I mean, you can definitely hear the Pharrell influence on this track in particular. And then also Timberlake, the way they just blend their styles is it is very urban, but it fits for Madonna. It's important for her to reinvent herself and her sound each time. And she's never really ever made music that quite sounds like anything off of this record. I feel like other albums of hers, there's some crossover stuff. But because this record was a very specific style, a very specific set of hip-hop producers that she was working with, it just carries a flavor that I think is quite infectious. I remember a lot of these songs, if anyone remembers the show Ugly Betty, I loved that show. I actually was not really familiar with Madonna so much around this album came out. I was only like 15 years old. And I remember watching an episode of Ugly Betty, and they played a lot of songs off of this new album because the album had just come out. And so they were, I think it was the season finale of like the second season. And that was sort of like part of how I got introduced to this record. And I think they played Candy Shop and a few other songs on this record. So for some reason, this album will always make me think a little bit of Ugly Betty. I missed that show. It should have gone on longer. There is something very flashy about this record. And whereas Confessions was very diva, it was understated in a certain way, you know, whereas there's a lot more extroversion on this record. Madonna is, you know, inviting you with no kind of qualms or queries or regrets to come onto the dance floor and dance your butt off. Which is basically what you're going to be doing to this record because it is very active. So 4 Minutes is the lead single off of this record. Very infectious beat and rhythm. I remember falling in love with this song when it came out. And the idea around the song, if I'm not mistaken, some people have speculated, since this was released in 2008, that this was actually playing a little bit off of the 2012 conspiracy theory, kind of a doomsday scenario idea, which is that, you know, in 4 years' time, the world is going to end in 2012. If you remember back in the late 2000s, that was a huge fear we all had. I don't know if anyone was really that afraid, but some people were. And to be honest, I've always been open. I've always been open to these things, so I didn't know what to believe. But some people speculate that the song is actually, instead of 4 years, 4 minutes, like 4 minutes to save the world. But it also is 4 minutes because the song is 4 minutes long. So, you know, I don't know if people might have been taking it a little bit beyond what I think they were assuming or thinking about when they did this, but this song was huge. It was a very big charting success for her, which is good because some of her newest singles don't really get that big. The song includes foghorns and cowbells and some Eastern Bhangra instrumentals, which I think is really cool. Again, Timbaland's sound is very earthy, and I love that. The music video is a little bit strange at points. There's parts where Madonna and Justin Timberlake, who features on this song, are trying to like make out, and they kind of have a cross-section diagram done of themselves, and it's very kind of actually reminds me a little bit of something Björk would do, like kind of gross but like sensual at the same time. But ultimately, yeah, this song is all about, like, it's supposed to be about social awareness. To be completely honest, I think the lines and lyrics are a little bit vague about, like, we only got 4 minutes to save the world. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. The rest of it is just like, let's have fun and dance on the club. And look, I'm with Madonna because I'm so, you know, look how far I've come. It sort of feels like a little bit like Justin showing off that he's singing with Madonna, because they're this power duo in the song. And Justin and Madonna, let's be real, they blend very well together. Vocally and just in their style of music and their dancing, I think they're a great duo. I wish they'd kind of collaborate again, to be honest. Very Michael Jackson. So Give It To Me was the second big single off of this record. Now Give It To Me is a very strange song. It's probably one of the strangest singles Madonna has ever released, just in terms of composition. It's got a lot of different compartments. I don't know how else to describe that. It's very, very upbeat. It's very provocative. And again, it's a very self-referential kind of song where Madonna is like, I have no boundaries, no limits. You can't stop me now. I've come so far. It's, you know, something she's kind of talked about, you know, being 3 decades into her career, like talking about just like how on top of her game that she really is, and just give me the next thing. I can handle it. I can do everything, and nothing can stop me. She actually was planning on naming the album at one point, Give It To Me, but if you remember, Timbaland in 2007 released a song called Give It To Me, and that was a huge hit as well, featuring Justin Timberlake and Nelly Furtado, so she decided to not name the album that after all. So there's this sort of like interlude section towards the bridge where there's like a xylophone that starts playing, and she just says, get stupid, and then Pharrell says to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right. This part is always a WTF moment for me. I have no idea what purpose this part of the song serves. I always just felt like the idea of telling someone to get stupid, I can understand, like, get so stupid, like, have so much fun, like, on the dance floor, but it doesn't come across that way. It comes across preachy, but, like, why would you tell someone to get stupid? I just, that part of the song always, although I appreciate it's, like, odd and different, and it is very Pharrell, like, the beat and the simplicity of the structure of it, and the rhythmic percussion, but there's something about that get stupid repeated that just sounds really cringy a little bit, and it's also just like WTF. It gets very psychedelic towards the end with all the synthesizers coming together, and it does feel like this just rave-like song. The music video is very garish, black and white, a lot of flashy psychedelia going on. So Heartbeat is one of those songs where she's really, really trying to emphasize her sort of urban, sweat it out on the dance floor, almost too hard. I feel like Heartbeat is one of those songs where It definitely does sound like your, 50-year-old mom, although she was not in her 50s when this album was recorded, or 40-year-old mom is, like, trying to record, like, a hip-hop song to go to the club, and it ends up sounding a little bit cringy when she sings "Get My Booty, Get Down." It's just we get it. It's a lot of what you get on this record. It's her having fun and not thinking too hard, and I think that's where the "get stupid" sort of thing comes in because it is sort of like empty your mind, let go of inhibitions, and just have fun on the dance floor, and who cares what people think. Because Heartbeat is like it's an unapologetic song. I mean, some people have compared it to Holiday because it definitely has that playful chorus where she sings, and I feel it in my heartbeat. It reminds me a lot of Holiday. And so it could be like an urban hip hop version of that song, and you could hear it that way. But it's not quite as iconic as Holiday, and I do think that some of it just comes across as a little forced. Miles Away is my favorite song on this record, and it was the third single. So this song was crafted off the idea of long-term relationships, how relatable they are, how we all go through them. This was another song that was played during that Ugly Betty episode, and I fell in love with it. And I remember I listened to this song so much around the time when this album was released. There's something whimsical, and there's something very melancholic about this song. This is one of those few moments where she really isn't just getting stupid. She's really analyzing the pros and cons of long-term relationships, and how they can often fall apart, but also how they can strengthen. You always love me more when you're miles away. There's this connection that we have that's almost strengthened by the distance, which sometimes can be a bad thing because ultimately you want to be together, and then when you realize that that distance was some kind of smokescreen for something else, then you realize that there's stuff you need to work on. But all this second guessing, all of this sort of late night thinking what the other partner is thinking so far away, you can hear that in the way she sings. And I like that her voice is just a little bit less processed. It's a little bit more raw. It's a little bit more, I think, vocally trained in its sound. And I think it just comes across like so soothing. And then I love the experimental electronic breakdown towards the end, whereas, at the beginning it starts out very, instrumental, very like guitar driven, and it turns into something that's a little bit more spaced out and cosmic sounding. It really takes it to another level. You can imagine that Guy Ritchie, her then husband at the time, probably inspired quite a lot of the lyrics on this song, which of course, her and Guy Ritchie split not long after this record was released. So, you can sense that things are starting to fall apart, and you can read into that when you look at the lyrics. She's Not Me is another song where Guy Ritchie definitely comes into the fore here. Who is this young new thing that you've got? Why does she look like me? That's freaking me out. You're just trying to replace me, but you can't replace me because I'm the best. So again, self-referential. This song has a great groove to it, and it turns what could be a really jaded, kind of weighted song into something that you kind of can just sing along and have a lot of fun to. It's actually quite a long song. It's over 6 minutes long, and I don't necessarily love that fact because I do think it gets a little bit lost in all of the sort of experimentation that kind of draws it out. You can tell that the Neptunes and Pharrell are sort of just trying to milk some of this a little bit too much, and it does come across a little bit wayward. And the next song, Incredible, has a similar issue. In fact, Incredible even more so. This song is 6 minutes and 20 seconds, and it's like, when Justin Timberlake goes on a little too long with some of his songs that just feel a little bit more like ideas but not fully fledged. That's how Incredible feels. And there are moments that stand out, but it doesn't stand together as a song very well. And then because it's so long, the song just all the good parts are so spread out, you don't enjoy it. So Incredible is definitely my least favorite. Just because also I feel like Williams' production is just a little bit heavy-handed and not quite as minimalistic and urban as I like. I don't know. Now, Beat Goes On is the one song that she worked with Kanye West with. I must admit, this song has a real groove to it. Again, I feel like it's rejuvenating these 80s pop hits of hers, like Holiday, like True Blue, like Into the Groove, and giving it the Kanye West or the urban, the 2008 treatment. And it just sounds really good. And I think this song works. I think a lot of people think this song comes off a little bit, again, sort of similar to Heartbeat, like someone who's a bit older trying a little too hard to get hip. But for me, maybe because Kanye sort of steals the show on this song just a smidge more, it works. However, the song after that, Dance Tonight, even more so. This song has this sort of pretentiousness about it, which actually fits You know, when you think of Madonna, you think of glamour, you think of material girl, you think of someone who's going out on the town and is going to be a little bit more, you know, who's not going to be going to some dingy nightclub. You know, she's going to be going to like the Ritz-Carlton and going to some fancy party, you know? And Dance Tonight has that, like, I think almost 60s, 70s, like, angle to it, that with Justin Timberlake pairing. It definitely has, like, almost that groove jazz artists, and it definitely feels belonging to that category. And it definitely embodies that groove, which is a genre of music. It's not my kind of thing, but for some reason it works on this song. And the breakdown towards the end with the instrumental and the synthesizer work, very, very, very nice. Okay, so Spanish lesson. We're getting some Spanish guitars leading us in. Madonna becoming extremely playful again, and provocative, hearkening to, you know, the idea of homework. And the Spanish part is a little heavy-handed. It's like, okay, we get it, you're trying to speak another language, but you're kind of just sounding like you're using it as a prop. I kind of don't necessarily love when artists do that. But at the same time, I think she wanted to get that Spanish flair in there, so she just decided to make it fun. I don't know what really else to say. It has some interesting production. So Devil Wouldn't Recognize You is probably the deepest song on this record. It was actually a song that she had composed quite some time before Hard Candy came out. And Timbaland, you know, and Danja looked at this track and they were like, oh my God, we can do so much with this. I want you, Madonna, you know, I want you to flesh this out more, and I think we can make a really melancholic, mid-tempo urban song that just like capitalizes so much more on your rich voice and your rich storytelling, because she can craft some beautiful lyrics when she tries to. And I think this song is definitely where it shows off. As quiet as it is tonight, you'd almost think you were safe. Your eyes are full of surprises, they cannot predict my fate. Waiting underneath the stars, there's something you should know. The angels, they surround my heart, telling me to let you go. I bet he couldn't recognize, but I played right into it. Who am I to criticize? Somehow I'll get through it and you won't even realize, falling through your own disguise. No more intoxicating my mind. Even the devil wouldn't recognize you. But I do. Again, I think Guy Ritchie a little bit comes into this, but this idea of, I put up with your BS because I'm a saint. But I can't put up with you anymore. You know, you keep pushing me over and over, you keep trampling all over me. And I keep coming back for more, so who am I to criticize? You know, who am I to be judging you when I should be judging myself for how stupid I've been, keep falling for you over and over again? You know, it's my karma I need to worry about, not yours. And that sort of wizened self-mastery comes through a lot in this sort of analyzing kind of way. She's talking about her own relationship with this person in the song. And then it just builds with these beautiful Gregorian choirs chanting in the background. It's very mysterious as it builds and builds, and yet at the same time has that very melancholic piano to just solidify it all as a through line. It's a beautiful piece. I think it's a classic example of a piece that is just a poem almost that's set to a beautiful piano instrumental that then the Neptunes were able to just incorporate all of their wizardry to make the song so much more enlivened with the instrumentation and with the production. Definitely a highlight. And we close the record with the ominous voices. This song comes off as a warning. So we definitely become a little bit darker and more introspective in this record. She's definitely second-guessing her own mentality, her own people around her, saying who is the master, who is the slave. Justin Timberlake provides backing vocals for this song. And it comes across, yeah, very ominous. There's actually a church bell that ends this record, which made me think that there was some sort of spiritual undertone to it. And you can read a lot into what she's talking about. You know, voices in your head starting to second guess, you know, everything that you're doing. This moment in your life where you start to see things differently and you start to think and you get tripped out. And it is a trip hop song as well, which I think makes it quite interesting. A tiny bit of a Bollywood Eastern instrumental. Treat me like a curse and tell me I'm your savior. I'll never know the stranger I used to know so well. Waiting for your answer is a kind of torture. Could I grow accustomed to this kind of hell? Are you walking the dog? Because that dog isn't new. Are you out of control? Is that dog walking you? Haven't you had enough? Now your time is up. Baby, show me your hand. Voices start to ring in your head. Tell me, what do they say? Distant echoes from another time start to creep into your brain. So you play madness like it's convenient. You do it so often that you start to believe it. You have demons, so nobody can blame you. But who is the master and who is the slave? I mean, you could be thinking, oh, is this about schizophrenia or something? But it's not literally about hearing voices in your head. It's about our own consciousness and our own mentality and personality and ego and our ideas of what our self really is, if that makes any sense. It gets trippy, and I like that. And it opens up the album to a context that, let's be real, is a little heavier than I think this album is ready to handle. This is Hard Candy. This is Madonna just having fun on the dance floor. But there is something, I think, actually a little bit esoteric about this record that kind of is under the surface. And you even get it on some of the songs, like 4 Minutes. There's that social awareness. There's that in Give It To Me. There's that in these songs at the end of the record and Miles Away. He actually is a lot more under the surface than you might think. Once you get past all of the urban, sexy and playfulness. And that's why I think this album has a lot more to offer than a record like MDNA, for example, which, even though MDNA has moments where it tries to get deep or spiritual, they try to propel the record in a certain direction. It's just all over the place. And I don't, maybe because she's too overt with it in certain songs, it almost feels like disconnected from the rest of the record, and so there's no cohesion. And a lot of my fault is just with the production and the songwriting on that record. It's very messy, and I probably will review it because there's quite a few things I could say. But I just think Hard Candy has a cohesion, and then like that subliminal kind of softer way of getting you to think under the surface. You could just be in jamming and grooving to these songs, but you could also be interpreting a little bit more of what she's saying if you really listen to some of the lyrics. Some of the songs do it, some don't. Like I said, it's not her best work, but it's definitely one that is heavily underrated. And I think that this album actually has stood the test of time really well. It's been 10 years. And you can see the sound and style is still very prevalent in artists like Pharrell and Kanye West. This record could have been released today, and I think it would still feel new and fresh. This was, something that started a trend of her being criticized for chasing trends and everything. But honestly, I don't think this came across too gimmicky or anything. I think it was important for her to branch out and work with some big name producers, and I think they made a great pop record out of it. And I think it's a great 80s meets 2000s kind of blend for her. But unfortunately, it gets a little bit rockier after this, in terms of her career, which hopefully she's going to, improve upon with her next record, which may be coming sooner rather than later. So that is my review of Hard Candy. I hope I did it justice. Let me know in the comments what you think about this record. If you agree, disagree, what your favorite songs are. Check out all the reviews I have linked in the description for the other Madonna albums I reviewed. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and also hit that notification bell so that you'll be notified if you want, to know when I'm releasing these reviews. I'm going to be trying to do them more frequently now. Fingers crossed. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. Peace, love, and light. Bye.